Welcome everybody, this is Heavy and today I wanted to give you guys an overview of the Acolyte class and both of its masteries. Let's dive right into this. So let's start with the base Acolyte class. So the Acolyte is a occult caster. The main theme of the class is physical necrotic. Secondary themes contain cold and fire. Which mostly is for Necromancer, but there are a couple of caster builds as well with like uniques and set that are possible. The strong has a very strong emphasis on health and ward, so like you can basically do both of it. Most of the time combining both of them at the same time is not really possible unless you use some specific uniques, but so there's a lot of support for health and a lot of support for ward. Acolyte has very strong passives, which also sometimes have downsides. Like especially the strong passives almost always have downsides as well. And the tree has some, like the Acolyte base tree has some notable passives like Soul Aegis, which makes your minions scale armor per level. That's really great. The base skills from Acolyte itself are Rip Blood, Summon Skeleton, Marrow Shards, Wandering Spirits, Harvest, Bone Curse, Transplant, and Summon Volatile Zombies, plus the 4 that you get from spending passive points in the Acolyte tree, which is Hungering Souls, Summon Bone Golem, Spirit Plague, and Infernal Shade. Those are all the base Acolyte skills. And now let's move on to the Necromancer. I'm right now on a Necromancer. The theme of the Necromancer is expendable minions. So basically having bonuses from minions dying or sacrificing your own minions for your own benefits. The other big playstyle and theme that you can do on a Necromancer is like big minions as well. For that you have Abomination and Bone Golem. We will cover Abomination in a second here. So yeah, that's the overall theme of the mastery. Obviously, like depending on how you build exactly, you can generally basically do permanent minions, you can make expendable minions, you can make decaying minions. That's one of the things that Necromancer really like makes it stand out. Necromancer has some mechanics or minions that baseline have a decay, so basically they are not permanent and the decay grows over time, so it's inevitable that they will die at some point. This would be Summon Wraiths and Assemble Abomination. There are ways to make them semi-permanent or fully permanent, depending on the skill tree. Yeah, so exclusive skills, we already talked about this. Summon Wraith, that's the exclusive skill that you instantly get once you master the Necromancer. The next exclusive skill, which is exclusive to Necromancer, it's important to note here as well. I forgot to mention that regardless of what your base class is, the skills in the first section of the passive tree are not exclusive. So both for Lich and Necromancer, all of the skills that are like in front of the level 25 row, so before this chain from the mastery that you're not selected, all of these skills are available to you, so there's some hybrid building possible that accounts for all the other classes as well. But yeah, Summon Wraith is exclusive. That's the exclusive skill that you get when you become a Necromancer. The next one is Dread Shade, which is basically a buff that will make your minion drain. And it's basically, depending on the skill tree, you can make it last very long. You can also change the drain into like self-poison, which like can make it last a lot longer. But basically it's like you buff one minion that gets drained and it will create an aura. I will showcase all of the skills in a second. And assemble Abomination, which is probably one of the most unique skills as a summon skill in any ARPG, I guess. Which makes you assemble one big minion from smaller other minions. Basically you sacrifice them and they will become one big minion. So let's cover the basics. I will not go through every single skill node. I will just basically show the foundations of the skill. Summoned Wraiths are basically like these Wraiths. They look very sick. They decay. You can see their health decaying. Summoned Wraith has a couple of different things in the tree. You can make them Flame Wraith, which then they will have like fire damage. They also will look different. You can, for example, make them not decay, but then there will be a maximum, because without that, theoretically, you do not have a maximum. There is a limitation to that, like you need to keep them alive longer and have enough mana to summon them. But like on a good build, you will have, like, you will be able to have like 15-20 Wraith up. Depends a little bit on the build. So yeah, that's that. The next skill, Dread Shade, I already talked about this. This will drain one minion. You put it on one minion, and then you can see this very faint aura around the minion. All of the minions that are inside this aura by default will gain 50% necrotic damage and 10 flat necrotic damage to spells and attacks. So what this makes you, when you summon a bunch of minions and then you basically give it to one, that one minion will die very quickly and all the other minions are very powerful. So there's one noteworthy interaction which I think is, basically are two nodes that you can make, like you can use them in any combination as you want. There's a node, Spectral Distance, that makes the buff apply to minions that are not inside the area. So basically it reverses this. What enables this basically, let's quickly go to the Champions Gate to just showcase that a little bit better on the dummy. Great, I do not have Champions Gate. Give me a minute. So we arrived at the Champions Gate for some testing. So for Dread Shade, if you take Spectral Distance, all minions that are not inside the area will get buffed. So what enables you is, if you have a couple of melee minions and a couple of ranged minions, you could basically, okay, I will give it to my ranged minions and now all of these get buffed. You could also make it the other way around, where, okay, you say your ranged minions are your main damage dealer, so you can give it to one of your melee minions. And then all the minions that are not inside get buffed. I really like this because this makes this, like, this is probably one of the most customizable skills. While like the base functionality is always kind of the same, it's very customizable. You can combine this with the node Enemy of My Enemy, which makes the Dread Shade not attached to a minion, but to an enemy. And now, depending on if your main damage minions are melee or ranged, you can choose to take or not to take Spectral Distance. If you don't take this, only the minions that are inside the circle get buffed. So like basically only the melee minions, or you would need to send like all your ranged minions inside the circle, which is not ideal. But yeah, this is a very customizable skill. There are tons more interactions. I don't go over like every single interaction. And then we have Assemble Abomination, which is, again, this is probably one of the coolest skills in the entire game. Let me just showcase this step by step. So basically what makes this great is, so Assemble Abomination by default is not very powerful. Like, this is very basic minion. You can see here that it has some stuff. So, and then depending what minions you sacrifice into that, it will look different. There's also a shit ton of stuff inside the tree where, like, if you sacrifice certain minions, the golem, like the abomination itself, will gain different abilities, which is amazing. But most importantly, if you sacrifice a specific minion, that part of the minion will become part of the assemble abomination. Now you can see I sacrificed the skeletal mage, and now there's literally like a skeletal mage inside the abomination. If you do it with a summon skeleton, so the regular summon skeleton, the abomination will gain these arms here. Sometimes I also gain, I think sometimes it gains, like if it's an archer, you will gain like this thing here at the back. It's amazing. If you have a wraith, it will gain the arm of the wraith as a size. That is so fucking sick. So yeah, you can combine all of this, sacrifice all of them, and then you have like a murder machine. Basically mage, skeleton, wraith. I think for the golem it should also work. So with the golem it has this like armor basically. So those were the exclusive skills. I want to touch a couple of notable passives, just for like very thematically or very strong passives in certain builds. For one, you have Elixir of Hunger, which basically turns your potion into a buff for your minions. Basically, when you use a potion, you and your minions will gain a buff that grants attack speed and cast speed and health gained on hit. And the duration scales up with passive points, but this makes active use of potion basically like an offensive and defensive thing for your minions. The next one would be Effigies. This is Necromancer exclusive. Elixir of Hunger is not Necromancer exclusive, but still very thematic. Effigies, it's basically like a defensive sustain passive, where if you get hit and get reduced to low health is 35% in Last Epoch, you consume one of your minions and heal whatever health it had to you. The third passive is Veins of Malice. Whenever you cast a spell, you sacrifice percentage of your current health, and you grant your minions haste and frenzy. With 5 points in this has 5-second uptime, 10-second cooldown. But yeah, haste and frenzy on minions is very hard to get, and so yeah, this is very cool as well. So that's basically it with the Necromancer. Let's move over to the Lich. So now we are on the Lich. Lich, the overall theme of the Lich is using health as a resource, and it has a lot of leech. So there are, most Lich builds will use a health based build, because one of the Lich exclusive skills doesn't really work with like full ward builds. It depends a little bit. You can make hybrid builds. But yeah, we will come to that in a second. So the exclusive skills for Lich are Reaper Form and Death Seal. Reaper Form is basically you transform into a badass Reaper, and you can float around and wreak havoc on your enemies. That's very cool skill. And the next one is Death Seal, which is a skill that makes you utilize being low health. What this does is it removes all your ward and it seals your health at whatever health pool it was when you used the ability, and you will not be able to get above that. And for every missing health, like for every % missing health you have, you gain basically extra damage. You can further like dive down onto that whole mechanic with like making it even stronger and giving you like armor, stun avoidance, and different kind of things. You can also make the ability lock you at 33% health, which would make you consider low health, because low health is 35% in Last Epoch. So this can like, this is on a button press, I am low health now. So you can also make use of some like low health things as well. So some notable passives would be Hollow Lich, which is a passive that converts all of your leech sources to increase damage. This is a decent tool at getting some extra increased damage, but most importantly, this enables a playstyle where you do not want leech. And there are a couple of playstyles that do not want to leech. I will not go into detail that, but like there is the option for that. On that note, by the way, I also forgot to mention the Lich Mastery bonus is 1% damage dealt leeched as health. This is generic damage leeched as health, which is a little bit rarer because usually most leech sources are on hit. Or like a lot of leech sources are on hit. And you have spells and melee attacks deal increased damage equal to your missing health. This is not so relevant at the end, but it's still cool to have. Another notable passive would be Volatile Blood. This works in conjunction with a lot of other passives. There's one in the Acolyte tree, which is Blood Pact, which drains your health and gives a lot of extra damage. This one gives 12% increased damage per passive point. That's a lot of increased damage per point investment, but it also drains your health. Lich itself also has a couple of nodes that will drain your health. Most notably, that would be the Mind over Body. That's the one that like has the most amount of drain in it, where like a lot of builds would utilize this, because this gives two intelligence per point. Usually passives only grant like 1 point of attribute per point. Unclosing Wounds is another one, which also grants health drain in exchange for 14% increased damage per point. That's a lot. And then there are a couple of other ones that are conditional, like Elixir of Death. But Elixir of Death is another notable passive because this gives you on-demand 50% damage reduction for physical and necrotic damage if you use a potion. This is pretty niche, but like this can be actually used to like face tank some like boss mechanics and stuff like this, because 50% damage reduction for 4 seconds on demand is really powerful. Moving on to the last notable Lich passive, Ageless Aesthetic. This is probably one of the strongest passives in the game, in my opinion, because this gives you generic damage leech as health, plus a bunch of extra movement, cast, attack speed. But again, like this is generic damage leech as health, so this does work with damage over time. This does work with damage from ailments and things alike. You can still combine this with like Soulmaw. Soulmaw is also damage leeched as health with increased leech. Again, both of these together are very, very strong. In conjunction with the 1% damage leech as health from the Lich passive, you gain like an absolute mad amount of leech just from these. And yeah, that's basically like the whole thing of the Lich. One more thing that I wanted to note, especially with Reaper form. Reaper form is very unique because Reaper form does give you... Wait, so we're at the Champion's Gate. Let's leech some life. So, Reaper form. Reaper form is very unique because it is a transformation, but it's not the transformation of the druid where it replaces your whole bar. Basically only the skill from Reaper form itself gets replaced into like a short ranged dash, which is called Reap. And Reaper form itself puts your health bar in a decaying state. The decay gets stronger and stronger over time, and it disables all health regeneration. You can still leech to like keep you in the form, but like the decay from Reaper form will get stronger and stronger and stronger up to the point where you will not be able to leech against. But yeah, that makes it a little bit more unique because this is still considered a transform ability. Like this still has the this is still a transformation for purposes of like items and stats. But it's working a little bit different compared to the druid one. Yeah, that's basically an overview of the Acolyte class with the Necromancer and Lich. Just notice there's one mastery missing here, which is the Warlock one. We don't know anything about it, but basically Warlock will have something to do with curses. We don't know any details yet. And one thing that what's worth noting here, I think, is that in my opinion, Necromancer and Lich are very far apart from each other from a like on the spectrum of archetype, where Lich is very self-centered, and Necromancer is very centered around having like minions and stuff. And there is a little bit of hybrid possible where you can like combine some of the things. Some notable interactions would be, for example, there's a way to make like a single strong minion build, like for example Death Seal has a node. Death Seal is Lich exclusive, again has a node that gives a minion absolute mad amount of damage and crit. And you can utilize that with the Necromancer skill, Summon Skeletal Mages. This is not Necromancer exclusive. And this has a node that makes basically the whole Skeletal Mage only be one big minions, but like only one big minion that is very strong. And then you can, for example, make that Death Knight. It's a melee minion with lots of necrotic damage. And if you do that, that's like a minion focused Lich build. So there is stuff like this possible. And there are a couple of other like very funny interactions. But generally speaking, those two masteries are very far apart. And I think Warlock will kind of serve as a connection between them, where I would assume Warlock might have one or two minion stuff, but it's also a caster focused mastery. And I can really see like a Necromancer Warlock build, a Warlock Lich build. Lich has a ability that already benefits of enemies being cursed, which is Harvest. So like some Lich Warlock stuff. Yeah. So let's see how that will shape in the future. But for the time being, that's an overview of this class. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned a couple of things. So yeah, for the time being, thanks for watching everybody, and see you on the next one. Bye.